Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. In this session of the top topics of the week, we'll delve into 5 most important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's explore each topic in depth so that you're well informed and prepared for the examination. So let's kick off with the first topic.
So PSLV to launch 2 satellites under Proba 3 mission on December 4. So here we'll actually understand how important this particular article is. Okay. So first we'll understand the concept and we'll read through what is actually given over here. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this Proba 3 mission, what is solar corona and CMEs, that is coronal mass ejections. And this particular topic becomes very important for your prelims examination under current events of national and international importance and for your mains under GS paper 3 awareness in the field of space. So India's PSLV, that is ISRO's PSLV, this is nothing but Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. So this is actually going to launch 2 satellites as a part of Proba 3 mission. Okay, so before we start, we need to understand what is this PSLV, right? So let us actually see what kind of question has come in the PYQ. So there has been a mains question in 2017. How does the Juno mission of NASA help to understand the origin and the evolution of the Earth? So these kind of missions, that is whether it is by any other space agency like the ESA or the NASA, or whether it is by ISRO, these kind of space technology news or articles become very important for your mains examination. And it can also be the specifics like the payload it actually carries, whether it's a cruise missile, a ballistic missile. All these details can be asked in your prelims examination as well. Okay, now let us understand. ISRO's PSLV is actually going to launch 2 satellites to study the solar corona under ESA's Proba 3 mission. Let me finish off the article here itself. Okay, first I will explain what is this PSLV. So if you see ISRO actually has 3 kinds of launch vehicles. Okay, so first launch vehicle is the small satellite launch vehicle, that is the SSLV, and then it actually has the PSLV, that is the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Next it has the GSLV, this is nothing but the Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. Okay, so first one, if you see the SSLV, as the name suggests, this is actually, what is a launch vehicle? It's a rocket that actually carries the satellite, places the satellite in a particular orbit and it comes back. So this is what is called as a launch vehicle. So as the name suggests, what is SSLV? It is a small satellite launch vehicles, right? So this actually carries the smaller satellites and places into the orbit or Earth's orbit and it actually comes back. Next one is the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. This is nothing but it is an upgradation or a higher range of the launch vehicle, and this has actually been one of the most successful, okay, because the number of launch failures has actually been almost nil or minimum. So in that term, the PSLV is actually the most successful over here. So this actually launches the satellites into the Earth orbits. Okay, what are the different types of Earth orbits? It can either be launched to the polar sun synchronous orbit, or it can be launched to the low Earth orbit, or it can be launched to the geostationary transfer orbit, okay, or the GTO. So these kind of different kind of orbits you need to know. Okay, so these orbits are actually decided by whether they are stationary, at what distance are they from the equator. So you need to know these kind of orbits. Okay, so when it actually carries, the PSLV, what is the amount of payload it actually carries? It varies from around 1425 kgs, and in case of the polar geosynchronous, sun synchronous orbit, it is actually around 1750 kilograms. Okay, so similarly, if you see the GSLV, this is the most advanced. Okay, so this actually stands for Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. Okay, so this is actually the most advanced form, and this also launches these particular satellites, or it carries the satellites into the Earth space, whether it is the low Earth orbit, that is the payload will be around 6000 kilograms when it is the low Earth orbit, or when it is the sun synchronous orbit, it is actually going to be somewhere around 2700 kilogram and so on. Okay, so whether it is a geostationary orbit, what is it going to be? So there are different kinds of payloads that can actually carry. So basically ISRO's PSLV, that is nothing but the launch vehicle, which is the polar satellite launch vehicle, is going to carry 2 satellites. Okay, and it is actually going to place in one of the Earth's orbits in order to study. What is the purpose? Satellites go to the space to study something, right? In this case, it is actually the solar corona. Okay, so what do you mean by corona? For example, you actually take this is the sun. Okay, so if this is the sun, here the visible part of the sun is actually called as the photosphere. Okay, this is the visible part of the sun. The next one, this is actually called as the chromosphere. Okay, so this actually has somewhere around 6000 degrees. Here it will be around 6000 to 22,000 degrees, I mean the temperature. And then the outermost part, so this is actually called as the sun's corona. Okay, this is the brightest portion, and usually if you see the earth, as you go deeper to the core and everything, what happens is that the temperature increases, but in the sun the outermost layer is actually the hottest, that is the corona is the hottest, where the temperatures can be even 1 billion degrees. Okay, so this is what is the corona. So this particular PSLV is carrying the satellites in order to study the sun's corona under ESA's Proba 3. What is ESA? Just like our ISRO, just like NASA, we have ESA, that is the European Space Agency Proba 3 mission. Okay, so this is what is this article about. Now moving forward, let us see what is the specification of Proba 3. See, Proba 3 is actually highly specific in terms of the precision formation flying. As you can see over here, precision formation flying. So here itself, let me say, for example, this is the sun. There will be 2 satellites. Okay, satellite number 1 and this is going to be satellite number 2. So this satellite number 1 is called as the occulter spacecraft. Occulter spacecraft, and this is called as the coronagraph spacecraft. So this spacecraft actually carries the telescope, and this is nothing but a spherical shaped or a disc-like satellite. So what is called as the precision formation flying? Here what happens, this is actually sent, that is these 2 satellites are actually sent in a rocket system, that is PSLV, and that will be released into the orbit. Okay, now what happens, these both systems will actually be parallel to each other. For example, see, they are going to be parallel to each other at a distance of around 150 kilometers. Okay, so they are actually going to be at a distance from each other. Okay, so this is, if you see over here, there is actually going to be a space that is 150. The distance going to be is 150. So what is actually the the major objective of this is, this will actually block the majority of the sun's rays, and this will, that is the occulter spacecraft is actually going to block the sun's rays that is actually coming on it, and it is going to cast its shadow on the telescope of the coronagraph spacecraft. Okay, so this is what it is. So if you see, the 2 satellites can fly in precise coordination with each other and create an artificial eclipse, that is, one is going to entirely cover the sun's radiation and cast a shadow on the telescope of the coronagraph spacecraft. So coronagraph spacecraft telescope to observe the solar corona. When it is actually blocked, what happens? It will not be too bright for the coronagraph telescope to observe and study the coronal ejections of the sun. So what happens is that, for a long period of time, it can actually stay stable and it can study the sun. So occulter spacecraft, this shaped satellite to block the direct sunlight. Okay, so if you actually see in this particular diagram, you can actually see this is the occulter and this is actually going to be your coronagraph. Okay, so moving forward, so as I told you, these 2 bodies are actually going to be at a distance of 150 meters. I think previously I have told you 150 kilometers by slip of the tongue. It's going to be 150 meters because it's going to be very close. So you can actually see here, right? So this is your occulter, and this is going to be your coronagraph, and the distance is going to be around 150 meters. This is actually going to block majority of the direct sun rays. It's going to create a shadow on the telescope that that's coronagraph is going to carry, so that the remaining outer layer of this particular sun can be studied over a longer period of time by this particular mission. So that is what it is. So two satellites are at 150 meters. Occulta spacecraft cast its shadow on the coronagraph's telescope, blocking the direct sunlight. So what happens is that it can capture the detailed images of corona in the visible UV as well as polarized light for extended periods of time. So similar, India also has it has a mission, right? Aditya L1 mission is actually the name of India's solar mission. So you need to know what are the missions globally that have been sent across for studying the sun, and why is it required to study the sun is also very, very important. Now, moving forward, scientific contributions of this Proba 3 is solar physics, that is insights on solar physics, that is it is going to give insights on the CMEs, that is the coronal mass ejections. These are nothing but powerful plasma eruptions of solar material that's actually going to be ejected from the sun, which can cause disruptions to the weather patterns, and it can also cause disruptions to communication and the power grids, networks, etc. And the next one is climate studies. It measures the total solar irradiance, and it also talks about the changes in the sun's energy output and how is it going to influence the climate of the earth. So this is the contribution. So this is why we need to study the sun. Okay. Now moving forward, let us see what have been the global, other global missions to study the sun. The first is Aditya L1 mission, and this was launched in the year 2023. Okay, this was India's first space mission in order to study the corona and the magnetic storms. Okay, so again Aditya L1 becomes very, very important, because here you know that it has been launched into the Lagrangian point 1. So you need to know what is a Lagrangian point. Okay, so for example, if this is the sun and this is the earth, okay, so between these two bodies, which actually has huge gravitational forces, between these bodies, what happens at particular points, there will be this gravitational forces will be stable, so that the satellites which are actually placed at this points will not tremble and fall down, and also it will require only minimalistic fuel consumption at those points. So if you see, there are actually 5 Lagrangian points L1 to L5 between the sun and the earth, and whereas the Aditya L1 mission is at L1. So you need to know what are Lagrangian points also. So similarly, we have the NASA's as well as the European Space Agency mission. NASA in 2021, it had the Parker Solar Probe in order to fly through the sun's outer atmosphere, that is the corona. Next, you have the Solar Orbiter by NASA and the ESA, launched in 2020 in order to take the closest image of the sun and the solar wind. Next one is the Interface Region Imaging Spectrograph, that is also by the NASA. It reads about how the sun's atmosphere is being energized, how does it actually lead to solar eruptions, etc. Now moving forward, we have the solar as well as the heliospheric observatory, and this particular observatory is useful for monitoring the effects of the weather on the earth. And finally, we have the Hinode, that is Japan, NASA and ESA collaborative effort, launched in 2006 in order to examine the magnetic fields, that is solar magnetic fields, and how they trigger the solar flares as well as the coronal mass ejections. Okay. So this is how this particular topic becomes very, very important. Now let's quickly solve an MCQ. Proba 3 mission, sometimes mentioned in the news, aims to. So as you know, it is actually aiming to study the sun's corona through precision formation flying. The technology which is used also becomes very, very important. So here your answer is direct. It's going to be B.
So second article is related to Uttar Pradesh. Now recently we got a news from Uttar Pradesh that there is some violence going on in one of the place. The name of that place is Sambhal. So we want to know what is that violence, why this is happening. And this is important for you from prelims as well as mains perspective. There is an act which becomes important for you to study. First, look at this question. Communalism arises either due to power struggle or relative deprivation. Argue by giving suitable illustrations. Now, one of the illustration or example could be the case of this Sambhal, which we are going to discuss right now. Okay. So, what's the issue? The issue is termed as Sambhal mosque case, or we can say one case related to some kind of a property dispute or land dispute. Now, what's happening? See, you must have heard about Ayodhya Babri issue. Then you must have heard about Gyanvapi Masjid issue, or you must have heard about Mathura issue. These all are very similar issues, wherein there is a mosque, or you call it masjid, which exists at one particular location. Now, this mosque obviously belongs to Muslim community, but there are some other people from other community, let's say Hindu. They are claiming this land. They are saying that this land does not belong to Muslims, rather it belongs to Hindus. Why? Because earlier or originally there used to be a temple at this location. But later on that temple was demolished, destroyed, and at its place a mosque was built. And this is wrong. This is being said by this community. So this is the core issue in almost all of these cases. As far as Ayodhya case is concerned, that is already resolved by the Supreme Court. But this Gyanvapi and Mathura case, these are going on. And right now we are hearing about a similar kind of case from this Sambhal area of Uttar Pradesh. Now what happened exactly? The similar case, the Hindu community or some petitioner from Hindu community went to a court, a local court in Uttar Pradesh, and said that here we have a mosque in Sambhal, and we are saying that here earlier used to be a temple, Sri Harihara temple, and this temple belonged to Lord Kalki. So this temple was made for Lord Kalki. Lord Kalki is supposed to be the reincarnation of Lord Vishnu. So there is a long story or a consideration that right now the Kali Yuga is going on, and this Kali Yuga will be ended and Satyug will be started by Lord Kalki. So in Hindu scriptures there is a significance given to Lord Kalki, and it is being claimed that this temple itself, the Sri Harihara temple, was made by Lord Vishwakarma. So the point is, there was a temple. But when Muslim invasion took place in India, specifically when Babur invaded in the year 1526, after this battle of Panipat, after that we saw that this temple was destroyed and a mosque was built over here. Now right now when local court heard this petition, they ordered a survey of this mosque. They said that go and check whether we get some kind of evidence or not. So that survey was ordered, and when a team went to this particular location, we saw a fight between the local people and the police officials. After that, the situation became very intense. Violence took place. Government has said that we are banning internet, schools and all. So the situation is very intense over here. Now look at the similar cases which are already going on with the court. So let's say for example this Gyanvapi mosque issue, which is from Varanasi. So here also similar issue is going on, and this issue is right now with Supreme Court. Court has already ordered a survey over here, but court has said that you cannot change the religious character of this particular place. So if it is a mosque, if it is a masjid, you can't make it temple now. Even if we get any evidence, we are not going to change the religious character of this particular place. It will remain as it is. The second case is related to Shahi Eidgah Mosque of Mathura. Similar case, and right now this is with local courts. It has not reached to Supreme Court, and they are considering all the claims. So the cases are going on. Now we want to discuss this particular act because this act becomes important for all of these cases. The name of this act is Places of Worship Act 1991. So when P.V. Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister, at that time he felt that in India the communal harmony is getting disturbed, and for that he thought we should bring some law. So if you remember that Babri Masjid issue took place, Babri Ram Janmabhoomi Ayodhya dispute which we call it. After that incident, government took this action to bring in this particular act. Government said that if we bring this act, there will be some communal harmony. There will not be new cases just like this Ayodhya issue. So what government said in this, that the act specifies a particular date. The date is August 15, 1947, our Independence Day. On this particular date, whichever religious place is there in India, it will continue as it is, will not change the character of that religious institution. That means before August 15, 1947, if there was a mosque at a particular location, now you cannot convert and make it a temple or Gurudwara. Or let's say there was a church over here. You can't make that church now temple or a mosque. It will remain as it is, as it was on August 15, 1947. Now this is specifically said by this act. The act also said that now there will not be any new legal suits. You cannot file any legal claim against any such place now. And there were some pleas, or there were some cases which were already there with the court which were pending. So through this act, all these pending cases were cancelled. So the attempt was to bring in some communal harmony. Now interestingly, in this act, there are some exceptions given. The first exception is given to Ayodhya Babri issue. Why? Because Ayodhya Babri issue was already being considered by Supreme Court. So the matter was sub judice. When the matter is sub judice, the government usually does not take any action. So this was given exception. Then we have this Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958. Under this act, we provide a list of monuments which are to be protected by the government, which are to be protected by Archaeological Survey of India. So this act specifically said, this Places of Worship Act said that our act will not be applicable to any kind of ancient monument or protected monument as such. Okay, so exemption to this. And third, it said if there is any settled dispute, then also it will be given some exception. Now the point is, as far as this Sambhal mosque case is concerned, or these cases are concerned, more or less they are talking about their places of worship. They want to change the religious character. They want to make it what it was earlier, but it is not possible with this Act, Places of Worship Act. And right now, Supreme Court is already considering some petitions. Almost 4 petitions are already there with the court, which is challenging the law itself. This Places of Worship Act is being completely challenged. So court is considering that too. So that case is parallelly going on. So we will wait for the court to provide us with the clarity on this issue. What will happen with this particular act? Then only we'll get the final conclusion for this particular issue. Okay. Now, look at this question. Which of the following statements regarding Places of Worship Act are correct? The Act prohibits any change in the religious character of a place of worship in India from what it was on August 15, 1947. Absolutely true. This is what we said. The Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi dispute is specifically excluded from Act's provision as it was under judicial consideration when the Act was passed. Absolutely true. And third, the Act applies to all disputes including those related to archaeological sites protected under the Ancient Monuments Act 1958. No, we said that this will not be applicable to these monuments. So third statement is wrong and the answer is 1 and 2, that is D.
Now in this article is not that very important for the UPSC examination, but UPSC can ask a question on PAN and how PAN 2.2 is different from the PAN that we are currently having, right? This topic is important for GS paper 3, that is, sorry, so this is a part of GS paper 2, important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability, e-governance. So it is important for GS paper 2, governance. Now a question was asked in the year 2013, electronic cash transfer system for the welfare schemes is an ambitious project to minimize corruption, eliminate wastage and facilitate reforms. Comment, right? Now, what is the context? The context is that the Union Cabinet has approved PAN 2.0, right? The purpose of integrating PAN 2.0 is to integrate all other, cards or all other, let's say we have TAN for the companies that deduct the income at source where TDS is deducted, or let's say for the ones uh, who are engaged in the stock market, they get this TIN number. So this PAN 2.0 tries to integrate all the other methods or all the other facilities that we have in our country, right? Which means the union government has approved to launch or implement PAN 2.0. First and foremost, what is PAN? PAN is a 10-digit, very, very important. If a question comes, this will be the statement in the question. 10-digit alphanumeric identifier, right? It's a 10-digit alphanumeric identifier which links all the financial payments. It links all the financial payments of an individual, or let's say a business person. The financial information of an individual or let's say a business is linked with the PAN, and who launches or who gives this PAN card? It is the income tax department. Income tax department, right, is the one that gives people the PAN card, right? Now this PAN links your tax payments. For example, whenever you file income tax returns, you have to submit PAN card. Why? Because this PAN card has the details or links of all your financial payments. Then TDS or TCS credits, filing income tax returns, specified financial transactions. And once, which means in short, it links all your financial payments into one system, that is one PAN card. And once a PAN card is given to you, it cannot be changed for the lifetime. Once you get a PAN number, that PAN number will stay with you until the end of your life. So all these facts are important. In case a question is asked on PAN, such type of questions will be asked from this particular PPT slide. Now, why was PAN 2.0 introduced? One, as I told you, we still have TAN, then TIN number. So these are different types of numbers that are generated, right, for different purpose. For example, this is for the tax deduction at source, right? These are different numbers. Now this PAN 2.0, which means as of now we have PAN card, then we have TAN, then we have TIN. Now this PAN 2.0 will integrate all these identification numbers under one single card. One. Second, the current PAN card is 15 to 20 years old, which means in order to upgrade the PAN card with the technology that we have today, we have introduced or launched PAN 2.0. Then under PAN 2.0, there will be mandatory PAN data vault system, which stores your data in a very secured manner, Data privacy. In short, it will ensure data privacy. A unified portal wherein you can interact with all the government departments seamlessly. Which means having a PAN card through which you can interact with all the government departments, right? It makes your work easy. Why? Because it will be totally paperless. At the same time, if you need to get PAN, right, you can get the PAN through online portal. You don't have to go to the office now. Everything is being digitalized. Right? Then we have grievance redressal mechanism, which was absent in the PAN 1.0. At the same time, The PAN 2.0 will integrate the QR code, which means just by scanning the QR code, every information will be made available. This is PAN 2.0 and this is how PAN 2.0 is different from PAN 1.0. So all these points mean the same that we discussed in the last slide. So you can please read all these points from the DNA notes that will be available on our website, or you can please check it in the comment box. Now let's solve a question. PAN is a 10-digit alphanumeric identifier issued by the Income Tax Department of India. Yes, the statement is correct. Once allotted, a PAN can be changed or updated based on the individual's request. This one is incorrect. This one is incorrect. This one is correct. So option A is the correct answer for this particular question.
Now let's start with the first article itself. 2 lakh child marriages were prevented. Is it important? Yes, it is important for prelims as well as mains, but more important for mains GS paper 1, where we discuss about Indian society aspect. So one of the cruel things, or one of the things which we consider as a negative part of Indian society, is the prevalence of child marriage. So you look at this question, previous year question, which is related to women in India. Empowering women is the key to control population growth. Discuss. Now, when such questions are asked, which are focused more on empowerment of women, child marriage becomes one of the angle which we need to understand as part of women empowerment. Okay. Now, let's start with what is exactly happening. So we said that our Union Women and Child Development Ministry, or Child Welfare Ministry specifically to say, from that ministry we got some data. The data claims that we have achieved something really good, that the child marriage numbers are reducing. They have become half. They have shown the data over here that earlier it was 47.4% and now it became 23.3%. So this is something good, and this data is being compared with this particular act, because when we are saying earlier it was 47.4%, it was before the introduction of this act. We brought an act in the year 2006. The name is Prevention of Child Marriage Act. We have some provisions in this act, and we are saying because of this we are now in a position to reduce child marriage numbers. Okay, so it becomes highly important for us to understand this act. Before that, what do we mean by child marriage in simple? So we understand child getting married, but whom do we call a child? So in legal terms, the definition of child is given under this act, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. Definition says, if any person, especially if that person is a girl and her age is 18 years, then she can get married. And if you are a boy, then your age criteria is 21. Then you can get married. But if you are getting married when you have not crossed this age limit, then it will be considered as child marriage. So you should know in legal terms what is this specific age criteria to consider you as a child. Okay. Now, moving forward. Understand how much or what kind of prevalence of child marriage exists in India specifically. So there are number of data, number of reports we get many a times. For example, there is this report from United Nations Children's Fund. In that report, they provided data related specifically to India. They said that almost 15 lakh women under the age of 18, they get married in India. That means child marriage of somewhere around 15 lakh girls. It is being shown. Similarly, another data says that 1 out of 3 world's child brides are in India. So that means the kind of child marriage takes place in entire world. India has a very good or very substantial proportion in that child marriage. So it's important. Now there are some other data too. These data are just for you to mention in your answers. When you're writing an answer mentioning this particular point related to child marriage, we expect that you actually write down one of these data. So you don't need to remember all of them. There will be many other data like National Family Health Survey 5, they also provided some data. You don't need to remember everything. But just for understanding, there are 8 states in India which are having highest prevalence of child marriage. And out of those 8, these are the 3 which are at the top: West Bengal, Bihar and Tripura. Now, there is a connection shown by National Family Health Survey 5 that in a state where education level is higher, where literacy level is higher, over there child marriage is relatively less. So if you look at the data from Kerala, we have observed that relatively child marriages taking place in Kerala are very less as compared to these states. That means there is a connection of education when it comes to child marriage, right? You can see the trend also. In the answers, you can mention the trend also. So for example, National Family Health Survey 3, 2005-6, their data shows the child marriage over here. And this is how we see the decline taking place till this National Family Health Survey 5. So you can make such graphs in your answers also. Now, first of all, we want to know why this child marriage takes place in India. What are the drivers of this child marriage? The first is our poverty. One of the issue is poverty. Yes, we are poor, but what is the relation? See, when the family is poor and a traditional society like India, a patriarchal society like India, where usually when the children get married, the girl has to go to another family. Now here the marriage is a responsibility for the parents, and when it comes to a girl child, it is considered to be some kind of financial burden on the family. So what the family wants, as soon as possible, the marriage should take place. Most importantly, when the age of that child is less, then the cost of marriage will be relatively low. Why? Where we have angle of dowry, we have to give dowry. So when the age of the girl child increases, then after some time you will have to give more dowry, more amount in the dowry. So considering all these angles, because we Indians are poor, so for us, child marriage becomes an easy option considering our poverty, so that in less amount we can get this marriage done. Then the second point is about social expectation. See, women in India is considered to play the role of a woman as mother or as wife or as a sister. Specifically, the role of wife and role of mother is considered to be more important than any other thing. So, usually if you see the boys, they focus on career, they focus on education. But when it comes to girls, it is expected from girls that they give priority to their role as mother or wife than their personal career, personal growth. So, child marriage becomes very obvious thing when it comes to girls, because they are not supposed to focus on their career. They are not supposed to focus on their education, graduation, etc., etc. They'll go ahead and get married. That's why child marriage is an option. Then third, they lack education. Girls do not have that much education or awareness about their own rights, that they have right to get education, that they have right to work. They don't know about it. And when you lack education, you don't get much opportunities. See, if you are well educated, you will have immense opportunities. Let's say in economic terms, you can get different kinds of jobs. But if you are not educated, you will not have much opportunities available. So that's a challenge. Apart from that, the social norms that exist in India, social norms or customs we can say, those norms are very much patriarchal in nature. So you will see that many a times, you will hear this in your families, that women or girls are supposed to protect the honor of family. So many a times, why child marriage is done? Because there is a chance that a girl might lose her virginity. So to protect her from getting into this act, which will lead to some crisis for the family in terms of honor, nobody will respect that family just because of this act. So it should not happen. That's why they'll go ahead with the child marriage. Then there are some safety concerns which we cannot neglect. That in India, the gender-based violence is very normal. Many times we have seen that women are either not given the respect or the dignity which they deserve to get. Many times we see the cases of rape or sexual violence. Such things happen in India, and that's why there is a concern of safety. So many times families feel that in order to protect these girls, it's better to get them married as early as soon as possible. So child marriage becomes an option over here. Dowry system we already discussed. And at last, the thing is, the society itself lacks the awareness about child marriage. Even if government brings some kind of an act wherein government is saying that there should not be any child marriage, but people are not aware of those acts. People are not aware of why there should not be child marriage, what kind of impact it will have on that women. They don't have idea about it. That's why overall we see that child marriage still exists in India even when we are in 2024. Okay, I hope you understand. Now we understood how child marriage is prevailing, why it is prevailing. Now what is its impact, the specific impact it will have on those childs, or we can say specifically on women who are getting married. Firstly, in that lesser age, let's say someone is getting married at the age of 12 or 13, they will go to some physical harm and psychological harm. They are not ready for the marriage, they are not ready for the physical activities or sexual intercourse, and because of which they will go through this physical harm or psychological harm. Then there is something called right to autonomy or right to choice. We have Article 21 in the Constitution which says that we have right to life and personal liberty. We say this thing. But please understand, when we talk about right to life and personal liberty, we talk about autonomy to take our own decisions. But in a patriarchal society like India, there is hardly any choice or any autonomy given to women, especially if you're a girl child. So here they don't have the ability, they don't have the decision making authority when it comes to their own marriage. So they can't decide anything. And this is something very important for us to know. Then there is angle of education and economy. See, when you don't get education and you do not have much opportunities, specifically economic opportunities, because you're not so educated, so you're not getting any job in the market, so you become dependent on your either parents or your husband or in-laws. Now you remain dependent, so that means you are one of the most poor person to be seen. So what will happen if you are poor, if you are in the poverty, you will continue to stay in the poverty because you lack education or economic opportunities, right? And second thing, you will remain dependent throughout your life. Most importantly, when you are dependent on some other person, you are a female person who is dependent on a male, then what will happen? This male will dominate. This male will ensure that he is above you. So this gender inequality will continue. So we are seeing overall this child marriage has relation with this gender inequality and poverty. Okay. Now, moving ahead. We said that we had brought an act which prevents these child marriages. This act, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. Now, if we see the key features of this particular act, it says that first of all, it has defined what is child marriage. We talked about the age 18 and 21. After that, the act says that in case someone goes for child marriage, in case someone is going or someone is facilitating this marriage, someone is supporting this marriage, then there will be a fine of rupees 1 lakh or 2 years of rigorous imprisonment. See, normal imprisonment is different. Rigorous imprisonment means you will have to do some hard labor in the jail itself. So it's a tough thing. These measures are taken against such individuals. Then we bring this child marriage prohibition officers. Now these officers are supposed to ensure that there does not take place any kind of child marriage in the country. So in their locality, what they will do, they will collect the evidences, they'll go to the courts, they'll go for arranging some mechanisms through which awareness can be created among people. So this is the task of these child marriage prohibition officers. Then most important thing which I consider is, in this act they have made child marriage as a cognizable and non-bailable offense. What do you mean by cognizable? There is something called cognizable offense, there is something called non-cognizable offense. Simply, if a policeman is coming to you and showing you a warrant, they can arrest you. But when it comes to any cognizable offense, we consider that this offense is very, very serious, and police officer does not require to bring any kind of warrant. They can arrest you without any warrant. That's why we are calling it cognizable offense and non-bailable also. That means you're not going to get any bail easily. Usually such offenses include murder, rape, etc. So you can see how much importance is given by this law to this offense of child marriage. They want to curb it as soon as possible. Okay. Now, look at the constitution, look at the international forums. What do they say about child marriage, or specifically the rights involved in it? For example, if you look at the Constitution of India, we have Article 21, which we discussed already, right to life and personal liberty. Then we have Article 14 also, which talks about right to equality. Article 15 talks about protection against any kind of discrimination. You see, when child marriage is taking place, there is some kind of discrimination between boys and girls. You just look at the age criteria. That age criteria itself is discriminatory. And there are many other things which are leading to violation of these all articles. So we are saying Constitution provides mechanism, Constitution provides the rights which should be protected, and child marriage goes against the fundamental rights itself. Then if you look at the international forums, you look at this convention, UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, or you look at the Sustainable Development Goals. There is a Sustainable Development Goal target 5.3. If you read this, you will know that they include the angle of child marriage. This target clearly says that we have to eliminate child marriage from the entire world by the year 2030. So overall, these mechanisms are showing that whether it is world government or United Nations or the international forums or our constitution or our laws, everyone is saying child marriage should be eliminated completely. Now, what has government done till now in regard to curb or eliminate child marriage? So there are various mechanisms. First, this act which we have already discussed, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. Then recently government said that we want to increase this age limit. We said that 18 is the age limit for girls and 21 for boys. Now recently what government said, we want to increase this age of girls from 18 to 21, make it same as boys. So if a girl wants to get married, she has to be of the age of 21 and not 18. Now this is something government has decided they'll go ahead with this, but for that they will have to amend this particular act, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. Okay. Then government brought Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme. Clearly shows that the importance of education is being promoted over here. So through education, through awareness, we can reduce child marriage. Then government brought this child line 1098. It's a 24/7 helpline available for children. They can call on this particular number anytime in case there is some kind of issue they are facing, specifically if it is child marriage issue. Then we have National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So through a parliamentary act, we brought this commission. This commission takes care of issues related to children. So they will come up with some reports, they'll come up with some data, they'll support some programs which eliminate child marriage. And at last, we have some financial incentives given by governments. For example, if you look at some programs by state governments, let's say Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh has this Jagananna Amma Vodi, this kind of a program. Or you look at Rajasthan, they have Mukhya Mantri Kanyadan Yojana. Now these are the schemes which state governments are bringing, wherein they are saying, if you delay your child's marriage, then in that case we will provide you some amount of money, some kind of financial incentive will be given. So when you are said that just delay the marriage of your child, especially the girl child, and we'll pay you something. So some incentives are there. Overall, we are saying these are the measures taken by government so that child marriage can be eliminated, and we are relatively successful because the numbers have become half. This was the context. So we are going in a right direction, we can say.
On national mission on natural farming. This is very important from agricultural point of view. GS paper 3 mains. Okay. All right. Let's see a previous year question. So here it is talking regarding permaculture. Okay. So our topic is regarding natural farming. So that kind of questions, something like this can also be asked from this area also. Okay. So the context is government has approved the launch of National Mission on Natural Farming NMNF. Okay. So what do you mean by natural farming? Natural farming is something which is understood from the term itself, natural farming. So how it is becoming natural? Because no chemicals. We are not using any chemicals. Okay. So if we are not using any chemicals, so where we were using chemicals, one, it will be fertilizers. It will be fertilizers. Another one, it will be pesticides. Okay. So these are the two areas we will be mostly using this chemicals. So here what we are doing, we are using organic fertilizers. We are using organic fertilizers. We are using even pesticides also, natural pesticides only we will be using. So this is the concept of this natural farming. So why we are using natural farming? One, to encourage biodiversity, to support animal health and welfare, discourage algae blooms. Why? How algae blooms is happening? Eutrophication. Okay, so the pesticides will be going to the water bodies, and again there will be nitrogen content will be there. So again it will be causing this algae bloom. So that is also avoided here, and again it will be supporting water conservation and water health. Also it will be discouraging environmental exposure to pesticides and chemicals, and it will ensure that a healthy soil is being built, and also it will be combating soil erosion and even helps in fighting global warming. Okay. Alright, so now regarding this particular mission, National Mission on Natural Farming, this is a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored scheme. So what do you mean by centrally sponsored scheme? Not a central sector scheme, but centrally sponsored scheme means the central government will be funding. Central government will be funding, but states will also have to contribute their particular share. So that is centrally sponsored scheme. Okay. So this is coming under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Okay. So that is the ministry as well as what type of scheme. So basically this is not a concept which we have brought in altogether. We already had this kind of programs. One is Bharatiya Prakratik Krishi Paddhati, BKPK. Okay, it was coming under Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana. Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana. Okay, so this was regarding organic farming. Okay, so this was regarding organic farming. So this BPKP was also a component of this organic farming, and also we had this Namami Gange scheme. Namami Gange scheme is regarding conservation of Ganga only, but still here also one component was there. Along the 5 kilometer belt along the Ganga river, we need to promote organic farming, okay, or natural farming. Why? Because the example which I told earlier, only the pesticides and everything will be coming to Ganga, and Ganga will be polluted. It was not just industrial waste, but say these kind of waste were also polluting Ganga. So we already had this kind of concept. Now we are coming up with a new mission, entirely new mission to promote natural farming. Okay. Alright, so what are the key initiatives in this? One, 50,000 clusters in Gram Panchayat over 2 years. In 2 years, we will be developing 15,000 clusters which will be promoting natural farming. Another thing, we will be at least achieving 10,000 bio input resource center or BR. So what do you mean by bio input? The major component in this natural farming is using organic fertilizers, organic pesticides and all. So for that, we will be creating at least 10,000 BRCs or bio input research centers, and also there will be 2,000 model demonstration farms. So here itself, from the term itself, it is understood model demonstration farm. So new technologies will be there, like zero budget farming and all is there. So for demonstrating this new technologies and all, we will be going with this model demonstration farms, which will be helpful for the farmers. And also we'll be deploying 30,000 Krishi Sakhis or community resource person. 30,000 Krishi Sakhis or community resource person. Like that, for in the health sectors we have ASHA workers and all. So like that, to ensure that more mobilization and more awareness generation is happening, for that we'll be deploying this kind of community volunteers. And also everything will be geotag. The monitoring will be geotag. What do you mean by geotag? We'll be attaching geographical coordinates, both latitude as well as longitude coordinates will be there, so that with that only we will be geotagging every initiative. Okay, so these are the key initiatives here in this particular mission. Okay, all right. So see a prelims practice question. Which of the following is a key feature of natural farming? Use of fertilizer and pesticide to enhance productivity. That is not, because that is against. Focus on monoculture with organic manure and intensive farming products. No. Integration of livestock and use of natural inputs like organic manure. So this is the correct answer. Okay. All right. So the correct answer will be this one. Integration of livestock and use of natural inputs like organic manures. Okay.